make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to The Puncher's Point. And still, Mikaela Mayer is now 2-0 against Sandy Ryan. She defeats Sandy Ryan by unanimous decision to retain her WBO welterweight championship. Now, before I get into the grading of this fight, let me say this, okay? Both of these women deserve a round of applause because they've given us two wars, 20 rounds of just nonstop action, okay? But at the end of the day, Mikaela Mayer is 2-0 against Sandy Ryan, and it looked like a completely different fight than the first time. And for anybody who had doubts as to who was the better fighter or who is the better fighter, those can be laid to rest after this fight. Mikaela Mayer went in there, and not only did she dominate in all assets of her game, not only did she have a great game plan, not only did she basically hurdle that obstacle of her former trainer being in Sandy Ryan's corner. She also went in there and she proved that she is potentially the best welterweight in the division right now. Obviously, there's only two of them that are champions, which is her and Lauren Price. Lauren Price holds the other three titles. And usually, when one champion has more titles than the other, I put that champion above her. But at the same time, Mikaela Mayer, I mean, she's a veteran in this sport. And I think now it's an exception. So I will say that Mikaela Mayer, I think, is the number one welterweight in her division. But overall, with that being said, let's go straight into the grading. We go start off with the strategy. Now, one of the things that I mentioned that I wanted to see Mikaela Mayer do, I wanted to see her stay on the inside a lot more. And the reason why is because I believe that one of the weaknesses for Sandy Ryan going into this fight was that if you pressure her on the inside, she tends to kind of shell up. And there were moments where she fought back, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, Mikaela Mayer looked absolutely incredible on the inside. She was doing exactly whatever she wanted to do on the inside. She was landing some of those sneaky uppercuts. Surprisingly, one of the strengths I had for Mikaela Mayer was her right hook, and the left hook was landing pretty successfully as well. Both of those hooks were landing. And what I really liked about Mikaela Mayer, even though I said I would have rather see her on the inside, she even was better outside than Sandy Ryan. You see, there were times when she would kind of bait Sandy Ryan. She would throw that jab, and then Sandy Ryan would kind of try to power through the jab and go into the inside. But at the same time, right when she would go to the inside, Mikaela Mayer started teeing off. She would save her combos for the inside. And that's what I really respected about Mikaela Mayer in this fight. See, in the first fight, the difference was both of them, they had emotions coming into that first fight. Obviously, there was the paint incident, there was the trainer incident. Obviously, Sandy Ryan and Mikaela Mayer, they did not have love for each other. Let's put it that way. So in the first fight, it was really emotional. You had both fighters going into the inside. You had both fighters throwing and landing shots. Sandy Ryan seemed like the stronger fighter that night. With Mikaela Mayer, on the other hand, what she was doing, she was always the more active fighter. She was always throwing the most punches. And in the boxing world, when you're throwing more punches and you're pushing the pace, you're pushing the action, judges tend to lean your way or to lean in your favor. I believe that's what happened in the first fight. This second fight, not only was she throwing more punches, she landed more punches. And on top of that, she was more active in any way you can think of. And what I really liked about her was if she needed to fight on the outside, she was going to fight on the outside. There were moments where she was on the ropes, and it looked like Sandy Ryan could engage and start landing some combinations in the ropes. And Mikaela Mayer just used that jab to slide out the way. You know, she had very good defense in this fight. She had Sandy Ryan basically guessing the entire fight for 10 rounds. The way I scored it, I had it 97-93 Mikaela Mayer. I had Sandy Ryan winning the second round, the third round, and the seventh. But other than that, Mikaela Mayer controlled this entire fight. And on top of that, one of the other important things that I was looking at in this fight, one of the other important tools was the body shots. Last fight, both of them landed over 50 body shots. This fight, Mikaela Mayer lands 55 opposed to 57, and Sandy Ryan only landed 34. Or I believe it was 30, excuse me. She landed 30 body punches. And I was surprised because in the prediction episode, I predicted that there were going to be more body punches thrown. And that wasn't the case. It was a lot less. Now, with Sandy Ryan, she had to do some good things. Well, I mentioned standing outside and moving around, and she did that. But the problem was, I feel like Sandy Ryan was a little bit too cautious, conservative. I believe she was going to the outside a lot, but she would only engage in the inside, and that was not what I wanted from Sandy Ryan. What I wanted from Sandy Ryan, I wanted her to throw that jab, use her head movement, use her footwork, kind of bait Mikaela Mayer. And there were times when Mikaela Mayer was lunging, and that was one of the weaknesses I had for Mikaela Mayer. And I wanted to see Sandy Ryan throw an uppercut. I wanted to see Sandy Ryan take advantage and start throwing some counter punches. But that didn't happen. Mikaela Mayer, her pressure was so much, and when she would get into the inside, it was so difficult for Sandy Ryan that Sandy Ryan had no answer for it. Mikaela Mayer, whether it was the outside, whether it was the inside, she controlled this fight, and she made it known that, look, it doesn't matter what you do this fight. I'm going to make sure that I beat you in every single aspect of this game, every single aspect of this fight, and I'm going to walk away and still. That's exactly what Mikaela Mayer did. So if I'm looking at the strategy, Mikaela Mayer, great strategy. Sandy Ryan had a decent strategy, but it just didn't pan out the way that she wanted to. So if I'm looking at this from a strategy standpoint, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna give it an 8. Okay. I do feel like both of these women had good strategies. I just feel like Mikaela Mayer's was a lot better and she capitalized on it a lot more. Sandy Ryan had a good strategy with staying on the outside, but she wasn't throwing enough punches on the outside, so she tried to engage on the inside. And then we're going to get to the excitement in this fight. And this is where the drama and the action, this is where it all spotlights. So, the excitement of this fight, what would I rate it? I'm going to give it a 9. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, this was better than the first fight. Let's get that out of the way. This was absolutely better than the first fight. What made this fight so exciting was because the drama was all there. Okay. You had again the story of part two with the trainers, and obviously the history that Sandy Ryan's trainer had with Mikaela Mayer. Almost 10 years of her career, she was training with him, so he knew all the tools for Mikaela Mayer, and he could have easily exposed that with Sandy Ryan. But the problem was Mikaela Mayer adapted like a true champion does, and to me, that was what was so exciting about it. How is this trainer for Sandy Ryan? How is he going to be able to get her ready for somebody like Mikaela Mayer since he knows her so well? The other thing was, I believe it was the eighth round, there was an accidental headbutt and it cut open the eye of Mikaela Mayer. And that was a big moment in this fight because that could have been a turnaround point for Sandy Ryan. Now, look, I'm sure the headbutt was accidental. There was a lot of clinching going on in that fight. Which, by the way, I really do like how Mikaela Mayer would basically use leverage to get out of the clinches. I also liked how Sandy Ryan would just push her off and then try to land some combinations. That goes on to the strategy part. But as far as that cut, when the cut occurred on Mikaela Mayer's eye, there was a part of me thinking in that, oh, Sandy Ryan can attack that, and she could possibly either get a doctor's stoppage, or she could go in there and mess up Mikaela Mayer, and that didn't happen. The Mikaela Mayer's corner did a great job of being composed, being calm, taking care of that cut, and getting Mikaela Mayer through the next 2 rounds. So shout out to her corner. And on top of that, it was action packed. I mean, you could tell both of these fighters wanted to go and look for the knockout. Sandy Ryan, or excuse me, Mikaela Mayer, right when round one started, zoomed out of the corner. She zoomed out of that corner. And you could start seeing her throwing that jab instantly, throwing into the body instantly. And the action was there. Mikaela Mayer was pushing the pace. And then towards the later rounds, it just got better and better because Sandy Ryan realized, I'm not going to win this fight on the outside because the game plan just didn't work. So she started engaging on the inside. And Sandy Ryan started making it a fight for Mikaela Mayer. So I do feel like the action was there, the drama was there, all of that was there. And I'm going to give the excitement a 9. Now, as far as the stakes, well, it's the welterweight division. To me, in my opinion, this is the most exciting division in women's boxing, the welterweight division, that 147-pound division. So that WBO championship is on the line. Not only that, but you think about the history with Mikaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan. You think about the 6 months prior with the whole pain and the trainers, like I mentioned before. So that has something to do with it. You think about, well, Sandy Ryan, she needs this win. Mikaela Mayer, not many people believe she won that first fight, so she needed that win. In my opinion, the stakes were a lot higher than people thought. And the fact that this was a main event in Vegas, when you had other fighters on this card like Bruce Carrington, Emiliano Vargas. You had all these other guys on this Brian Norman Jr. Like they could have made Brian Norman Jr. in the main event, but they didn't. It was Mikaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan because Top Rank believed that Mayer and Ryan too was going to deliver, and it absolutely did. So the stakes were high. So with that being said, I'm gonna give the stakes an 8. I do believe that when we really go back and we look at this fight, I do believe that the stakes were big for this fight. It's a lot bigger than what people think. You had that WBO championship on the line, and overall, that's the belt that Sandy Ryan felt like was robbed from her in the first fight. So the fact that we get this second fight, they did it instantly right away. And, they didn't do any tune-up fights. There wasn't any fights in between those where we're looking and we're like, oh, well, Mikaela Mayer lost or Sandy Ryan lost or they have to get through this person first. There wasn't anything that would downgrade the hype. So overall, it was still there. They did it 6 months later, and both women showed up and they fought. So overall, I'm gonna give it an 8 because I do believe that with the whole history and the drama and what was on the line, which was that title, I do believe that this helps Mikaela Mayer in the pound for pound standings for the women at least. So for me, I'm gonna give it an 8. And last but not least, the impact. How does this impact women's boxing or the sport of boxing in general? So the impact, here's what I will say. It impacts the sport of boxing because Mikaela Mayer has now proven that she is ahead of Sandy Ryan. You're 2-0 against her. Regardless of what people thought in the first fight, you are 2-0 against her, statistically. So when we really look at that now, there's only two champions left in that welterweight division. It's her and Lauren Price. And I do want to give an apology to the Puncher's Point community because I was going to announce Natasha Jonas versus Lauren Price, and it just slid right under my nose. Lauren Price defeated Natasha Jonas by unanimous decision. So now there's only two champions left in that division. So when we look at that welterweight division, there's only two women left. And the impact that it had on the women's sport of boxing, the high impact was that whoever was going to win this fight was going to get that fight with Lauren Price. Now, do I believe that Sandy Ryan and Lauren Price would have sold a little bit more? Yes, for the sole purpose of both of them are British and you could have did it overseas. And you could still do that. Mikaela Mayer is a big enough name to where it will sell. And you could sell it as the undisputed welterweight champion. But now, overall, the impact was going to be the same regardless of who won. Actually, I lied. As I was saying that, I was thinking in my head, it wouldn't have been. Because if Sandy Ryan won this fight, there would have had to be a trilogy. There's no way you couldn't have given a trilogy regardless. But she didn't. And Mikaela Mayer now 2-0 Sandy Ryan, which means we get an undisputed championship fight in that welterweight women's division. So in my opinion, the impact was big. I'm going to give it a 9. So when you put that all together, the overall grade for this fight is going to be 8.5. So when we compare it to the other fights that we graded for season 4, Mikaela Mayer versus Sandy Ryan 2 is going to be ranked the 5th fight of season 4. It is going to be right below Usyk versus Tyson Fury 2 and right above Clarissa Shields versus Daniel Perkins. So number 5 is a good place to have it. In my opinion, both of these women, they showed up, they showed out. When you talk about the history and the drama and all that type of stuff, I do believe that it deserves to be the fifth ranked fight on this card. I mean, again, shout out to both of them. Congratulations to Mikaela Mayer on retaining her title. But as for Sandy Ryan, I mean, you went in there with one of the best women boxers today. You went 20 rounds with her and you gave her a fight. The first fight you arguably won. It was a very, very close fight. The second fight, not as close, but regardless, Sandy Ryan, her nickname's the Lion. She proved that she is a lion. She went in there, she kept fighting regardless of what happened. And I do believe she needs to hold her head high, and I believe Sandy Ryan's got some good fights to make, even though she's not, um, even though she's really not in that title picture right now. You never know what could happen in the future. So with that being said, what's next for Mikaela Mayer? Well, there's one woman that she lost to in that welterweight division. That's Natasha Jonas. I do believe she's way past Alicia Baumgartner at this point. Not as far as weight, unless Alicia Baumgartner wants to move up to 147 pounds, which it's possible, but I don't see that happening as of right now. So the fight I would like to see from Mikaela Mayer would be her versus Lauren Price for undisputed. In my opinion, the reason why I have the impact graded that big is because now it's going to be pretty easy to make that fight as long as the promoters, Top Rank, DAZN, Match, whoever, I think it's Sky Sports for Lauren Price, whoever it is, or Boxer, I can't remember which one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, y'all in the comments, tell me who Lauren Price is promoted by. They need to come together and they need to make this undisputed championship fight. So that's the fight I want to see. But if you can't make that fight, Natasha Jonas would be the second best fight to make. There's really nobody else that you could put Mikaela Mayer up against as of right now. There's really not. So I would say it's Natasha Jonas or Lauren Price. That would be the next fight that I want to hear from Mikaela Mayer. I don't want to see a tune-up fight. I want that undisputed championship match ASAP. And if you can't make it, then her and Natasha Jonas 2 needs to happen. But the problem is when you make her and Natasha Jonas 2, the problem is you prolong the fight against Lauren Price if Mikaela Mayer wins that fight. Because I always believe if it's 1-1, you got to have a trilogy. You know, in very rare cases do I believe that, but I want to see her versus Lauren Price. And I believe Lauren Price will accept that fight. It's all about the promoters, and the whole negotiation, the business and the politics side of boxing. That might get into the way, but overall, I would really like to see Mikaela Mayer versus Lauren Price. And not only that, I'm gonna take it a step further in England. I would like to see it in England. So overall, that's the fight I would want to see. As far as Sandy Ryan, she's 7-3 now. When we go and we look at Sandy Ryan's record and her resume, she has fought in some great fighters, and I wouldn't be upset if we got to see her versus Jessica McCaskill maybe. Um, her and Terry Harper, they can run it back. If you make Lauren Price versus Mikaela Mayer, I would love to see Sandy Ryan versus Natasha Jonas. And then the winner would get the winner of Lauren Price and Mikaela Mayer. So that would be the fight that I would like to see. But we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. Overall, congratulations to Mikaela Mayer, Sandy Ryan, keep your head up. But regardless of who won, this was a great fight. It really was. I mean, I'm glad that I got to stay up and watch this fight. Because sometimes you stay up and the fight's boring, it gets you tired, you're not. And then I got to go and do the podcast and I got to complain about how boring it was and how tired I am. I'm wide awake because those women kept me wide awake. So shout out to Mikaela Mayer. Shout out to Sandy Ryan. But overall, congratulations to Mikaela Mayer on retaining your WBO welterweight championship and still. So with that being said, it's time for us to sign out of the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all tune into the podcast, the YouTube. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the social medias. Overall, the Puncher's Point, we're going to keep on punching. We're going to keep on giving you guys great episodes. We're going to keep on giving you guys great content. And overall, we got some big things planned for season 4. Season 4 will come to an end in May after the Inoue fight. I do want to remind y'all about that. And then get ready for season 5. So with that being said, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.